are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing fantastic, and it's so nice to see you. I thank you everyone for joining us again.
Exciting. It's just 2.0. What are we going to say this time? No, by the way.
Well, and it's interesting for those of you who don't know. First of all, I'm Jean Brownhill. I'm the founder and CEO of Sweeten, and we have Emily Henderson here, which we're so excited about. And this is actually round two because the first time, I believe that we broke the internet.
You and I.
Yeah, you and I broke the internet. And the interesting other part is, Emily, we did have somewhat of a discussion before your dog started barking, but a lot of folks didn't even see any of that. So
weird.
If you would indulge me and let me ask you a couple of just clarifying questions around the design process. One of the things I think that you mentioned that was so interesting to me, and I've actually been thinking about it a lot, and let me sidetrack 1 second. I just want to also say I love your new contributor, Asia.
Thank you. Me too.
She's amazing, and I got lost down her Instagram last night. I just think that she's such a great contribution to your team. So I just want to call that out.
I'm going to tell her that. That's so nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that you had said is that, when you're styling, it's really different than designing or decorating. And you said that styling is all about storytelling. And for some reason that has just been noodling in my mind. Can you just walk us through the difference of what it is different doing styling versus designing? Because I think that is something that people, especially I, didn't really understand the difference.
Okay, so let me just give you a quick background because I'm not trained in interior design. I didn't do the traditional schooling for it. So basically I was a stylist for print magazines, for commercials, and essentially you are to tell a story with somebody else's product. Or for a magazine, it's like, if it was with Martha Stewart, you're trying to tell a story of Summer Jam or whatever, but you're always trying to think of it in an editorial way. So it's more about what the story kind of provokes in the reader. And so I was pretty good at that. I thought I knew what I was doing. Came to LA, went on Design Star because I was bored and there was very little styling work in LA. Ended up winning Design Star. And then had a show. But anyway, this is all to say that I started being a designer with clients right afterwards, but I truly, the learning curve was pretty big. It'd be like the difference of being a screenwriter and a playwright. It's people think it's the same, but you really have to. It's different skills. Mm-hmm. So I took my styling brain and brought it into the client work, which I think had lots of benefits because you care more about the story of the family, trying to bring out the personality, making sure that it really reflects the people that live there stylistically. You talk more about how it feels and how it looks. You maybe downgrade fashion a little bit too much. So I would say the first few years I was definitely no, this chair is awesome. You can't sit in it. I'm God, it's so cool, So I had to learn how to become a better designer that really filled the needs of the family. Anyway, that's all to say that but by not training under a interior designer and not going to design school, there was a lot of stuff that I either had to teach myself or learn on the job, make mistakes, and including how you even run the business. So I may say some things today that are totally wrong because they're based on just my experience. Although I have asked a ton of interior designers that are friends of mine, and so I kind of understand the industry too. But I just want to say that I didn't go to design school. I don't even know if I am allowed to call myself an interior designer. But most do.
Well, so that context is super helpful because I always think of you as a teacher. I think you've done such a great job of bringing everyone along as you've learned how to be, first obviously you're a stylist, then you're a TV star, and then a designer and blog star, and really helping so many people to understand, how to get a space to reflect, as you said, how you want to feel and the values that your family has and the personality of your family. So I would love, I am sure that you have so many tips and tricks for us. But one of the things I would just love to get is like, who should hire a designer? Like, when should you hire them, and who should hire a designer?
Okay, so if you're doing a pretty big renovation, whether it's a whole house or even just doing your kitchen is often a pretty big renovation, and you truly don't have the time or the desire or experience, it's a good idea to think about hiring interior designers, strictly because you're going to make mistakes, because even we make mistakes all the time. And so to really get what you want and reduce the amount of, it's a luxury service, it is, but I would say if you don't have the time to really do the research to figure out how you want it to look and have the experience, then of course an interior designer will benefit you. However, so historically, people I'm talking in the 80s, people hired interior designers. It was kind of before the internet, and you almost had to in order to get things that were called to the trade. And which is a little bit, it's going away because of the internet. The internet really democratized design in an amazing way. So it made an average homeowner be able to buy a great sofa. And so that, and because of Pinterest and Instagram, people can really, if you have the time, you can do it yourself, really. Yeah. And again, you're still going to probably make some mistakes, but that's okay. But you can do it yourself. Whereas I think 30, 40 years ago, people didn't have the resources. We didn't have the stores. You went to the local emporium store to buy stuff.
Right.
So that's exciting. And then also there are way more resources, online resources. I've never worked with any of these companies, but Modsy, I wrote them down because I really want people to feel like there are options if they can't afford an interior designer. Modsy, Havenly, Decorist, Room Lift, those are all supposed to be really good, as well as a lot of designers do e-design, which is far more affordable than having the in-person interior designer. So Valinda from my team, she does e-design now. It's amazing. So and I just want to hiring an interior designer will take your house to the next level. You'll probably get more custom pieces. You'll probably look more unique than if you bought all from different big box stores. But you don't have to do it. You truly don't.
And talk to me about, so one of the things that I think that people, so I'm a trained architect. I went to architecture school, and it's interesting. Architects always think that they're great interior designers. You know this, you're smiling. And it's just the same, architects also always think they have a great sense of direction. I have found neither to be true. And I do think that the feel, you keep talking about how you want your house to feel. I think interior designers really do, because maybe they're dealing with all of the elements that you really do sit in and touch and look at, it does not just create a vibe, but an actual the things that you feel and touch, like the sofas and pillows and stuff like that. So
yeah, I mean, and that's my favorite stuff for sure, is it's that the layering that makes it feel like a unique home. But yeah, the relationship, I've worked with a lot of architects, and I totally understand basically what decorators often do, and stylists, is just add what architects think is unnecessary stuff. Is that true?
Yeah.
Kind of, right? So I think it's been a great thing for me to learn that especially in this house, which you can't see, but it's called the Mountain House on the blog, that we really did. I really tried to think about architecture first in this house to make sure that you don't also need to add a lot of stuff in order to make your house look like a home either, But I think that, but this conversation between architects and designers, I think, is always very interesting and fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think that getting to a place where you can really work with someone to help you manifest, again, your vision of the world, right? So at Sweeten, we really care about bringing everyone's unique vision, of what their family is, what their composition, what their values are. We want to bring that to the world. Now, oftentimes though, people have conflicting ideas in there, and that can be, manifest in their family, but also manifest in their actual design aesthetics. Can you give us some either tips or tricks? Like, what do you do when a client comes to you and they have, all different design aesthetics on their pin board that they want to be able to, try to bring together into one vision?
Yeah, I think it's far more common than people having a clear vision, for sure. Like, and especially these days, I think with the inundation of so many different styles, and people are attracted to so many different, it's very, very, very common. So I think that so one of my overarching philosophies is that you can mix as many different styles together as you want, as long as you have a consistent color palette.
Oh, interesting.
But that doesn't necessarily work for architectural finishes, and so when you're renovating a house, I would definitely stick to like whatever seems integrous is not a word, right? Whatever seems like, goes with the architecture of the home. It can be a modern version of it, but like, I think I would lean towards that as far as like permanent finishes. And by finish, I mean like, tile, lighting fixtures, flooring, just, but then I really do think you can just infuse all these styles together just by having a relatively tight color palette. So because mixing different colors, styles, textures, shapes, sizes, all patterns, all those things are great, but it can be a lot if you don't control it with some element. So I try to control it with the palette.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Any other tips and tricks like that there where, let's say we're working with an interior designer, or even just trying to get our own design aesthetic and doing it ourselves or using one of these services? How do we save money? Like, where are the parts where you can save time and money, whether working with a designer or just doing it yourself?
Well, okay. Working with the interior designer, I would say if you have a pretty clear pin board, that saves them a lot of guessing, a lot of back and forth. If you have a sofa you love, show it to them, because they're gonna source 10 different sofas to show to you, and if you mix all of it, that takes time. It really does, and time is usually on an hourly basis, and it costs money, obviously. So I think the more work you can do up front, obviously the better. But as far as like where to, I have a different philosophy on where to splurge and save than everybody I know. I feel like you should splurge on the conversation pieces, because these days there are very good sofas out there that are not that expensive. So it used to be like, oh, you need to splurge on like a really great sofa because you're going to sit on it for years, which I'm great, do that. But there are also really good affordable sofas that will also last for years.
Yeah.
So I would splurge on that amazing rug that nobody else has, a really great piece of art that will create a conversation. Just like those pieces that you see, typically they're vintage or custom, that you're just like, oh my God, that is going to just shift everything in the room and elevate everything. So I have found the things that I've like splurged on that I've been happy with have been because they've been a conversation piece, not because they've been something that there's just really good furniture right now that's at big box stores. So I just don't feel like people have to spend $10,000 on a sofa anymore, like, because there's good sofas for $2,500.
Yeah, I love that. I've been collecting my friend's art since I went to Cooper Union, and so art, architecture, and engineering are the schools there. And so I have like a whole storage unit just filled with friends' art that I rotate through my apartment. And I love that as an idea to really splurge on specifically artwork. Warmed my heart.
I agree. I always say that one of my biggest regrets is not going to art school, not because I wanted to become an artist, but because of all the friends that you make that later become artists that can give you all this amazing art. So that's a hot tip, guys. Become friends with emerging artists.
Totally. And support them and buy their work and put it in your homes, especially right now. I was actually so excited. I mean, excited is the wrong word to talk about Black Lives Matter stuff, but there has been incredible art auctions to support Black Lives Matter, and I've bought like a ton of photographers and paintings that I wouldn't actually have able like to have access to, and so it's like dual benefit there. So I'm really excited to start to have that in my own home. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I think that there's a huge push, even more than ever, to buy small, local, sustainable, like there, again, the internet has really democratized it. Like I remember growing up, if you were to become an artist, that every parent was like, you know, but now I feel like with our kids, I'm like, become an artist. You have options. Like you can actually have a real career, because the internet has really just like expanded exposure and, you know, audience.
By the way, Etsy's stock price is like through the roof, because during the pandemic, I think a lot of people decided to open up Etsy stores and start selling those things that they'd never thought that they, you know, they maybe had an impulse to do. So yeah, I'm all for supporting. Like, I don't know, I'm currently in the market to look for some knitted goods so that I can like tell my friends that I knit them and buy them from Etsy, but don't tell them if they're watching. All right, so we've got a couple of questions here. You know, one of the questions I saw in the comments, which I just wanted to go back to, was about the color palette question and like narrowing the color palette. So the question was around like, what does that mean? Does that mean that you have like a monochrome room? So like it's a blue room and everything is blue, but it can be all different aesthetics? Or do you pick 2 or 3 colors? Like, what does that actually mean?
Yes, we keep meaning to write a post about this. So how do we normally do it? Okay, so to choose a color palette, I normally will go and like pin a bunch of like or how do we normally start? Okay, look in your closet first off. This is probably the easiest way to do it. Look in your closet. You're obviously going to find out what you're attracted to. Now, this doesn't always translate to home, but it's a good indication of like, oh, I like a lot of color, like a pattern. I have so much blue. I have pops of red or whatever. So, and then I pull a color palette together by having colors both on the warm and cool sides of the color wheel. This sounds scientific. It's not, guys. So like, if you want to look up color wheel, and there's going to be like blues and greens over here, and then reds, orange, yellows, pinks. Don't quote me on that, by the way, but you get it. There's cool tones and there's warm tones.
Yes.
And I like each room to have like between 3 and 5 different colors, and at least a couple from each side of the color wheel. If it's only cool tones, it might be cold. It might feel cold. And if it's only warm tones, it can feel a little heavy and dated. So, and by the way, with warm, it can also be wood and brass. Like if you aren't into, you know, orange and red, also wood and brass. So I tend to have 3 to 5 different colors, with a couple of those could be neutrals. And then you don't have to match with a Pantone chip, but just like kind of keeping it in that world. But also, if you see this amazing bright yellow enamel 1960s directional table lamp that like is awesome, like that can still look cool. It just kind of helps you give a guide not to go all over the place. At the same time, break those rules if you want to, if you feel confident enough. But for most people, keeping it within a color palette really does help everything look cohesive and pulled together.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask a follow-up question for myself, because this is definitely something, again, as an architect, I tend to just be like, well, we'll just have everything white or everything monochrome, or I have like every color in the rainbow, like this book wall behind me and so on. Do you have a primary color when you have that many colors in a room? So if you have like 5, do you say, okay, and the primary or the brand color is this, and then these are all secondary supporting colors, or you try to layer them in equally?
Ooh, see, this is where it's like you want to talk to someone that's design school. I don't think you have to have a primary color in there. Like, I definitely like things a little more tone as well. But you can bring it in, but no, I don't always have a primary in there at all. Cool.
Oh, another good question. So do all the wood elements in a room have to match? This is such a good question.
Such a good question. No, they do not. I like the undertones to be kind of in the same family. Like for instance, a really shiny cherry might not remember cherry, guys, like kind of like the
Yeah.
dark
Remember,
finish.
like Ethan Allen, sorry, Ethan Allen, but you have like a lot of cherry.
Yeah. So if you have like a really tiny cherry next to like a really organic matte wood, like some of those can feel like they're in different worlds. So I like to have the finish be relatively the same, meaning mostly like a flat finish, not shiny, and then just get the undertones work together. But I've also, like in our old living room, I had rosewood and I had a lot of white oak, and those are very different and they look good together. So another, I mean, this is confusing, but another rule that I have is pretty always looks good next to pretty. If you love something and it's beautiful, it probably will look good next to something else you love that's beautiful if you're willing to have an eclectic home. So there's times when I've eliminated things from rooms and I'm like, that doesn't go. And then I'll later be like, that actually made it cooler. Like that created tension. It did something interesting. So it's a hard balance to make. You want it to look pulled together, but you don't want it to look perfect and like nobody actually lives there.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's definitely, again, like one of the things that we love is just how different all of our renovations are. So like if you go to our blog, you'll just see like everyone has a different idea of what they think of as home. And yeah, the worst is like that pink bathroom from the 1950s that like everybody had. It's like, let's not do that. We are now in the world where the internet exists. Everybody can have like a semi-custom or custom space for sure, for all the reasons that you said before. All right, Emily, we have another question about how do you have any design tips to maximize small spaces?
Certainly. Definitely do, guys. Okay, so double duty furniture. So ottomans that have storage in it, like sideboards that are cabinets. I'm trying to, like, when you are looking for furniture, just saying, could this also have another function, a storage function? That definitely helps. I do think that in a smaller space, having less furniture will help you. Like, I think that it's easy to be like, well, this is a small sofa, and I have this small chair, and then this small chair, and then this small chair, and sometimes all of that will actually end up making it look smaller because it's busier. So I just try and think about bringing as little contrast in as possible if you're trying to make it feel and look bigger. So by that, I mean, like, this isn't the time to have, a crazy black and white busy pattern. That's really fun. And you can totally do it if you want to do it. But if you're trying to make a space bigger, reduce the amount of contrast. Like, that will always make it feel smaller. So
interesting. I saw on your blog that you just did a space, you redid a space where they had an all black wall, just one accent wall. And I see a lot of people do that in small spaces. Like, they will create like a ton of contrast. And I think maybe it's to make it feel more vertical. I'm not sure. Any thoughts on that, like, accent wall on a small space?
Yeah, I think that the desire is to have a focal wall, which I totally get. It does chop up a space, which tells your eye, it like makes your eye feel like the space is smaller when it's chopped up, So we have an accent wall kind of rule, and we've blogged about it before. And I think that as an architect, you're actually going to agree with this. But essentially, like, if it's a niche, if it's a dedicated space that architecturally is addressed differently, then that's a great opportunity for an accent wall. But if you have 4 walls in a room, don't just paint one a different color. Like, it just kind of chops up the space. I've seen it work, by the way. So, like, if you did it and you're like, oh my god, like, I have seen it work, but generally, and that makeover that Julie did, that generally that is the case, where it just chopped up the room and made it feel so much smaller.
Yeah, I get that rule and I agree with it. I think that makes a ton of sense. So when people are thinking about, especially right now, I think a lot of people are home. They've been looking at the same 4 walls for a long time. They probably are thinking about creating like an accent wall or just something that makes the space feel really different. what can people do like right now? Obviously, I want them to renovate. I want them to totally transform their home, but we have to be realistic that everybody, wants different levels of solution. What's something, if I've been staring at the same four walls, what can I do to like
Just shake it up.
yeah, a gallery
I
picture
was
wall
gonna
is usually
say,
my
yeah, like
go-to.
artwork, and there's a lot of awesome DIY artwork you can do out there right now. Like, so artwork obviously does make your house feel more personal and more like you. I do have a rule about decorating your walls that we are about to write about. I'll give you guys like a little sneak peek. But
Nice.
but what we've realized is when we're designing a room that you want to address every wall differently with different, how do I, it's hard to explain, with different, so basically here's a formula that I use. One wall might be a gallery wall, one might be a mirror, one might be a diptych, and one might be a sculpture. Like, I try to not have like gallery wall next to gallery wall next to diptych next to, so it's like each wall kind of is addressed with this different art style, whether
Yeah.
it's again gallery, big single piece, diptych, triptych, grid, sculpture, and mirror. Those are kind of like the 5 go-tos that we use to address all walls. So if you're looking around, you're like, oh, I have one small piece on that wall, one small piece on that wall, but that might be something that you could change pretty easily. That would make your house just feel just more styled, more pulled together. And also, yeah, art is like the #1 way to make your house feel like a unique, personalized space, for sure.
Love it. Love it. All right, we have a very specific, so we asked folks to submit questions beforehand. So we have a very specific question. And as a dog lover, and I know that you have dogs as well. So
I saw this question. I do not know this answer, but
oh, okay.
but is it the one about the basement?
Yeah, to create a dog wash station in a basement renovation. So I actually, surprisingly enough, one of the last projects I did when I was working in a traditional architecture office was I created a dog station.
Genius.
So they're really just like, well, I mean, it sounds like the person is familiar, and certainly if you Google online, you can see a lot of examples, but they really are just a nib wall with a shower head in it. So it's just like a truncated shower is what you're.
And is there an enclosure around it?
Yeah, so it's a completely enclosed space. The trick is that, so it's 3 sides enclosed, and one we did was tiled, and then you have like a truncated shower. So like the shower handles are at the top though, and then the shower head. So then you can like turn it on, wash your dog. The trick is that you end up still getting a little wet because the front is open. So I've seen some like fancier ones that have that solution done, but yeah, I think, well, that was the only one that I ever did. And it sounds like you don't have.
No, it sounds awesome.
You use your backyard.
When we did, yeah, but like we were hosing them off. They do not like that, guys. Like, obviously, but we could really. But when we did this Portland project, my little brother, who I did it with, he kept saying, we've got to put in a dog washing station. We've got to. And I was just like, what? And it didn't make sense to me because I live in LA where it's not muddy ever in LA. But so I think we put one in outside the mud room. It was like it was brick floor. And I think we just did a spigot with it. It wasn't as fancy as that one. But it does seem like this is clearly going to be more of a thing because as people are having more and more pets, like, got to get them their own little shower. I mean, that sounds very cute, by the way.
I mean, I think that the real like idea here is that I think we're all figuring out how to use every aspect of our homes in a more efficient way. Like everyone, the people that are posting projects on Sweeten right now are like, looking at their garages, their attics, they're building ADUs in their backyards. They're looking at their basement saying like, oh my God, this would be a great place. Why don't I just wash my dog? Why do I take them to the groomer?
Totally.
Like, I think that we're going to see some really interesting properties go back on the market in maybe a year or two that people have done like full renovations where they never have to leave their house ever again.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is really exciting to fully use your home in every way you can. And that's the question that we get all the time is that, so I have a vintage style home. What can I do to it that won't ruin the history of it, that won't take away its charm, but make it work a lot better for your family? And I think people have a lot of guilt about, you know, taking away anything that's original. I
Mhm.
understand that. I think I used to kind of be more in that camp, but as I've had children, it's you like if you don't use a room because it's, you know, it's closed off because it, you know, it was set up in the 30s how we used to build house, like then you're wasting a room, like,
Yeah.
and that's not doing, you know, that's not complementing the house in any way. You're just wasting it. So I obviously you do want to still try and keep things architecturally kind of, you know, original and or at least have speak to it. But I just think it's important to use your home as best for your family, like
Yeah. Yeah.
and for your lives. And it's like if you don't, if you have a room that you never go in, you don't want to touch it, like that just seems like like kind of a waste, you know? Like
Yeah,
why
totally.
turn it into a room that you can actually use? So
Yeah, we had a blog post a while back where the family had taken out some fretwork between a living room and a dining room that had been there for a long, long time. And we ended up having to turn the comments off on it because people went crazy. There's lots of people who really believe that you should never touch any of that. I tend to be in the same camp as you, where you want to keep the original identity of the house, but it needs to be able to work for you. Like the very worst thing is that, you know, one, either you're not using the space, or two, you know, people do like these renovations that, you know, are just not even remotely historically accurate to the place. I'm like, well, why don't just buy a loft? Like, it's fine.
yeah,
Just go buy a loft.
yeah. No, I definitely don't want to encourage people to just like, you know, buy a craftsman, turn it into a contemporary home. But I know that I have family members that are even like, I feel like I shouldn't take out this wall. I'm like, but you can take it out. You can add detail that will still make it feel like it was always open, but you'll actually just enjoy being in your home so much more. So
Yeah.
that's my permission giving to people that are kind of on the fence. Just think about ways and maybe consult an architect on how you can make sure that whatever you're doing to your house looks like it could have been original, because I think that's what people are afraid to go away from, but there's ways to do it.
All right. Well, we are a little bit over time here. I would love if there's anything, like any tip or trick that you think that our renovators, you know, that you haven't shared with us. This has definitely been so fun. As always, I've learned a ton already, and I'm already thinking about how I might incorporate some of this into my own living room, which I'm currently trying to make look not like a hodgepodge.
What is, I mean, I had an interesting conversation this week with our contractor that did this house. He's coming back to do some other work, and we were talking about renovations and working with clients and working with designers, and his best advice, because I was like feedback, so I was just like, Jeff, now that it's been a year, like how did it go with us? Like, how
are you as clients? How are you as clients?
Yeah,
Amazing.
I was the homeowner and the designer, and like we generally had a great rapport, but I know that there was, you know, things I could have done to, you know, and he was like, sure, like, you know, you change your mind a lot, blah, blah, blah. But he's honestly like, the difference between a good project and a not so good project is how engaged the homeowner is in the process, and how much you care, and how, like, and just being there in meetings and being able to, like, you know, obviously, like, have making it a positive experience by as much as you can, like bringing, I don't want to say compliments, but he's like, you guys always walk to the house, you're like, oh my god, this is so good, I love this, this actually is different than we thought it was going to be, can we tweak that, blah blah blah. And he's like, he thinks that that's how a home kind of just takes the next level, is how involved a homeowner is in the process.
Yeah, I love that. I think that engagement and communication are really the key to a good renovation. Like we really encourage, like, the second that we see a project going off the rails, we typically can say, like, it's a communication breakdown, like 9 out of 10 times. And so we just really have learned to encourage a really open dialogue between renovator and general contractor or designer, whoever they're working with. It's an intimidating process, and I think people, they start feeling like they can't expect the same level of service or the same level of communication or the same level of professionalism that they have in other parts of their life. They feel like they can't negotiate, they can't give feedback. And so I want everyone to be able to renovate. I want everyone to be able to create a home that they love. part of that is just to like feel confident in doing it and like talking to a general contractor or talking to a designer. So
yeah, and it's what we talked about in our first IG live, just how important chemistry is. Like, you can look at somebody's portfolio all day long as a designer, but you really need to meet them and just like make sure you're communicating well, and that you could even have different styles. Like, well, that's kind of tricky, but do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be like exactly like this, you know, I want that from here. It's more just like, how do we talk? Because it's about your home. You are changing a decent amount of money, so you like there's already kind of this fraught transaction, you know. It's so you just want to make sure you have really good communication, really good chemistry.
Yes, I completely agree. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. I'm so happy that it worked, and these tips really have been so helpful, Emily. I really, really appreciate your time, and you are just, I keep saying, I think of you as a teacher. I have learned so much today.
So nice, thank you.
And I hope everyone has as well. So
thanks for having me, Sweeten. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay, bye everybody.